Welcome to the GCN Tech Clinic, where we aim to answer your bike equipment tech related questions. And as ever, you can submit your questions using the hashtag AskGCNTech down in the comments section below, and we'll do our best to answer as many of them as possible. So without further ado, this week's first question comes from Tiago Santos, who's been watching the Olympics and says, I've noticed that the track cyclists are still using those old sort of bottom bracket crank designs with 5-bolt arms. Why don't they use stiffer sort of 2-piece crank arms and bottom bracket? Greetings from, and I can't see what the flag is. Can't see what it is because it's too small on my screen. Anyhow, the answer to the question is that for big track sprinters and stuff, they're such powerful athletes. The power they're producing is huge, and it's quite common for them to break things. I remember speaking to Philip Hines, who won gold in London in the team sprint, and he was saying that they had regular competitions, like they kept a tally of how many bits of equipment they broke during training throughout the year, because they just put so much force through it. And so they often don't use the standard off-the-shelf components that you or I would use or buy and put on our bikes, because they just have custom, specially made stuff that's just super strong to withstand those forces. The other reason why a lot of them are using 5-bolt arms is because of chainring compatibility, and that they're using, you'll notice, filled in solid chain rings that are a bit more aerodynamic than sort of chain rings that you get on most bikes that are designed to be a bit lighter, with loads of sort of holes and ribs and shapes on them and stuff like that. So that's the other reason for that as well, particularly in events like the Pursuit and the Madison, where the riders aren't as super high-end powerful as the sprinters, but need to be aero. Next question is from Campbell McDowell, who says, this is more of a question for Alex because it's about lube, and Alex loves lube. He does, but he's not here, unfortunately. And he's asking, should you put lube on a brush and then apply the lube onto your chain with a brush, or straight from the bottle? Well, in most cases, the lube bottle is designed to also be the lube applicator as well, with the tiny little nozzle at the top. And there are different techniques, and it will depend specifically on what your specific lube recommends. But most often it's that you put it at the bottom on the bottom part of the chain after the derailleur, so it's on the inside of the chain, and that way the sort of centrifugal forces as the chain goes around the drivetrain cause the lube to then move outwards and permeate through the chain. But remember, you only need to lube the rollers on the inside, so excess lube that's on the outside plates of the chain, it shouldn't be there. So you can, once you've got the lube permeated inside the rollers and pins, you can then just wipe down the excess off the edge of the chain. It should keep your drivetrain cleaner for longer. Next question is from Nolan Schuler, who says, thanks for the videos, you're my go-to when I need bike help. The rear freehub body on my OEM wheels has sort of crapped out due to water getting inside, and it's non-serviceable. It will be a couple of weeks until I can get a replacement freehub body, so my neighbour suggested that I soak the freehub body in acetone or some sort of cleaner degreaser and then try and re-lube it until my replacement comes in. My question is, now that I soak the freehub body, definitely much smoother now, what would your recommendations be for lubricants to try and use to get down into the freehub body where the inner set of bearings and pulls are, since I'm unable to open it and apply something like Park Tool lube or Shimano freehub grease? Some people are recommending soaking it in medium weight synthetic car oil. Well, if it's only going to be a few weeks, I'd probably just say stick it out, a couple of weeks, stick it out if it's running smoother now as well, especially. And if you also soak it in kind of degreaser, it's just going to sort of wash out remaining grease as well. And it's very difficult to get lube to permeate in beyond bearing seals, because they're designed to keep stuff out and keep stuff in. So it's going to be a lot of hassle, and I'd just say anything for an easy life, just wait till your new one comes and pop that on if you've got one ordered. Next question is from Lewin Bevan, who says, what are your thoughts on using white spirit to clean your chain and cassette? I've been using it for roughly 3 months with no issues yet, and it gets it squeaky clean. Thank you. So, right, it is good, and if you wanted to create the cleanest chain available to humanity, what I would do is clean it first. Well, I'd use a sonicator or hydrostatic bath, and then I would first put it in a solvent such as white spirit. I would then use a degreaser, and I would then use probably soapy water after that to get rid of that, and then water to get rid of the soap. And then if you wanted to go the ultimate cleaning procedure, you'd finally use acetone and then get it to dry in a slightly warm place if you were taking your cassette and your chain off. There's actually been academic papers written on how to clean things to lab grade level, and acetone is the final thing that you use, as it is the best thing at removing water as well, but then you have to let it dry, and so the acetone, it evaporates, it's quite volatile, and you have to let the water come off as well by evaporating it, and then you would apply your lube after that. The problem with using white spirit primarily is that it isn't that great for the environment, and if you're using things like acetone and white spirit, you shouldn't be putting them down the sink. You should be putting them in a solvent waste disposal and then getting rid of that. But in reality, people rarely do that and end up just washing it down the sink, which isn't great for the environment. So, it's nice to be able to use environmentally friendly degreasers, such as ones made by Muck-Off and other companies as well. The other thing to be aware of, if you are using white spirit, I would only ever use it on things like my chain and my cassette once they've been removed from the bike, and that's because they are, solvents like that can be quite potent. They can damage the paintwork on your frame and damage the other components, and they're very good at stripping grease out of areas you don't want to strip grease out of. So like that previous question, your freehub or in your derailleur, there's grease in there, and you kind of don't want to let that thick grease get stripped out. So yeah, if you're going to use white spirit on components like chains, then take them off your bike first. Next question is from Michael Gradek, who says, what makes a bike more stable in gusty wind situations? I feel like the wind makes my front end get quite wobbly. Intuitively, I thought it might be something to do with my rims. I ride low profile 27mm deep rim on the front. However, I got the chance to try out a bike with 32mm rims on a very windy day, and I could not believe how stable it was, especially compared to mine. Slightly higher profile, more stable. Can it be the shape of the rims, the shape of the spokes, or is it some other factor making my bike less stable? Well, the height of the rim is not always the biggest factor, because the shape of it, you're correct. There was all this chat many years ago about having V-shaped aero rims. They were the first shape, and they weren't very aerodynamically stable in anything but a straight line. And so as a result, they stall like a wing of a plane stalling when the air comes from a crosswind at higher yaw, and when a wheel stalls, that's when you feel a twitch. Now, that's why we sort of started to get different rim shapes and U-shaped rims. Spokes can have a bearing on it too, but judging by what you're saying, unless you are an incredibly sort of light and small rider, lighter and smaller riders are kind of more susceptible to crosswind twitches. They get blown around more. I don't think the wheels are going to be playing a massive role, because they are quite shallow, what you're talking about. You'd notice it much more if you're using a 50 or a 60 deep wheel. But it could be something else, such as the length of your stem altering the handling characteristics of your bike. If you want to make your bike more stable at the front, maybe consider using wider bars and using a slightly longer stem if that can work for you without compromising your position too much. Next question is from David Bradwell, who says, at the end of videos, we're often asked to give a big thumbs up. I only have normal sized thumbs. Can I still take part? We don't discriminate. Any sized thumbs are good here on the GCN Tech channel. Interestingly, I've actually got double jointed thumbs, so they can check this out. This is, my slap base thumbs, but that's for GCN Tech After Dark. Mick Chaganis says he has a technical question about the engine. I watched your how to warm up properly video and he's just started getting into time trialing. Great to hear. And he did a 27:39 10-mile TT the other night. Nice work, good time. And he says, my question is, will doing a warm up, sort of, 20-minute, 30-minute warm up, will that slow me down in the actual race? Will I run out of steam in the last couple of miles of a 10-mile time trial? Are warm-ups just for higher level athletes? No, but this is a common thing. Like people, or often beginners, it can sound counterintuitive, the idea of you go and warm up and, it's tiring you out for the actual race. It doesn't. If you're doing a warm-up right, you're not killing yourself. You get up the zones, you get the blood flowing, you get your heart going, you're getting used to the feeling of doing the effort, and your body's physiologically getting itself ready to do the event. But you should be properly fueled beforehand, and you can also, sip a bit of energy drink during your warm up, or take a gel just before you do the race, after your warm up, and you'll have more than enough fuel to do your event. If you were doing a really, really long event, like a Gran Fondo or a big Sportive or something, yeah, there's probably not a need to warm up beforehand, because the event's long enough anyway, and you're going to get warmed up during the event. But for a time trial, absolutely, or a hill climb, warm up, crucial. And last question this week is from, it doesn't say who it's from actually, it's, I'm sorry about that. But it says, I'm thinking of changing my front rings from a 52-36 to a 50-34 compact chain set. Do I have to shorten my chain, or will the existing setup be okay? Yes. Now, unless your chain was a bit short to begin with, you will most likely need to remove a link or two. What you will find is that if you swap your chain set and you adjust your front mech, it'll still work. Like you'll get with that existing chain, it'll still work. But the chain will be ever so slightly too short, which will ever so slightly compromise drivetrain efficiency, and also the shifting won't be as good, and particularly you'll be putting the rear mech under a bit more strain, and you'll have to adjust the B limit screw. So it's not ideal. Always try and run the correct length chain where possible, but if you are in an emergency situation or whatever, you can sort of get away with it. But yes, you shouldn't have any slack loose chain, and your chain shouldn't be too tight. There are methods to get the correct chain length, so we have videos on that you can follow and make sure that you're all good. Right, hopefully we've got around to answering your questions. If we haven't, then keep persevering, fire them down, hashtag AskGCNTech in the comments below. Hopefully we'll get around to it another time. Thanks very much for submitting them, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.